Hey everyone, welcome back to Ask Amy. It's good to be back here with you. I have a question today. Sorry, get myself adjusted here. Question today from Mary Lou. And first of all, I want to thank you guys for sending all your questions. I have a lot of questions in the queue, excellent ones, and I really will get to them. If it feels like it's been a while, feel free to send me a little note. If you have a question and you haven't sent one, either way, if you have or haven't, but you have a question about anything, habits, change, anxiety, like something you're experiencing, this bigger understanding and how you can see this in a new way, whatever your question's about, send it to me at askamy@thelittleschoolofbigchange.com and I will add it to the queue. There's some really great ones there. And again, I just really appreciate you guys sending them. So yeah, this one I think is going to allow me, this one from Mary Lou today will allow me to kind of speak to our experience in maybe a somewhat different way. So let me just get to it and read the question. So she says, I've listened to your podcast and signed on to the waitlist to the next school. Awesome. In December, suddenly out of the blue, I started having a series of debilitating panic attacks. They seemed to start when I had a small nosebleed, and after it reoccurred a couple weeks later, I visited my doctor. He expected that the bleeds were due to dryness in the air, but did a number of blood tests, which all came back showing good results. However, I'm taking a medication that I can't pronounce twice a day so that I can sleep and get through days without my fearful thoughts grabbing hold of me. I know they are thoughts. They aren't me, but it's hard to remember this when the panic is strong. How can I be in the state of well-being we all naturally have when fearful thoughts come so often? I know they aren't real and they aren't me, but they are powerful and determined to make themselves known. On the meds, I have more peace and it feels great, but I would like to see changes without the need to medicate. Is this a possibility for me? So, thank you for this question, Mary Lou. I know you're not the only one with it, and there are several kind of aspects to this. I mean, there's the anxiety, panic attack, medication kind of piece of this. And you didn't explicitly say this, although you say on the meds I have more peace and it feels great, but I don't want to be on the medication. You did explicitly say that. And, you know, just that little piece alone, which is just a little segment of your question, so common, right? I mean, I can't tell you how often people say, I'm on meds and they kind of help, but I hate that I'm on meds. Not that I hate the meds, and not that, you know, usually these medications are never a long-term solution. So in some way, we're always looking toward kind of getting off them at some point. But, you know, it's more of a thing about, I don't like the fact that I'm on medication. I really want to kind of get off this. And so I'll just say something really brief about that before we dive into the bigger question, which is that we're always doing the best that we can see to do. And sometimes, often, our best will clash with our mind's idea of what's best and what we should be doing. So often that's the case when people are on medication. So much thinking just out in general. And I'm not even going to say it's all bad. I mean, it's just thinking, right, about what it means to be on medication. And it is thinking. And there's a lot of it sometimes. So for anything, medication is no different than anything else that we might have a ton of thinking about. If you notice yourself, you know, thinking this is wrong, this shouldn't be, I shouldn't be on this, something's wrong with me for being on this, you know, it's like just see by the heavy, judgmental, harsh feeling of that all that's going on is you're sitting there thinking up all kinds of not nice stuff about yourself. We're worrying about what we're doing and thinking we should be somewhere else. And that's just one way that we use our imagination. One way we use that creative mind of ours. And it's not a great way. It's not a helpful way. It's not a kind way. So if you're on medication and right now today it does not feel like the thing to do to get off that medication, then just cut yourself some slack. You know, that means you're doing the absolute best that you can see to do from how things look right now. Fine. Doesn't mean a thing. Doesn't mean anything about you. Doesn't mean anything about your future. how long you're going to be on these. It doesn't mean anything about your past. It just is, it's just that today you're on medication, so just give yourself that if you're in that camp. So Mary Lou, let's get to the bulk of your question. So you were having these panic attacks, and you have fearful thoughts now that grab a hold of you, and you say, I know they're thoughts. I'm going to kind of slow this down and pick it apart a little bit. I know they're thoughts. They aren't me. That's true. And it's hard to remember this when the panic is strong. So it is hard to remember that when the panic is strong, but I want you to see that panic isn't a thing. Panic is what happens when we don't remember what you said, that's just experience and it isn't you. And it is safe, inherently safe and moving through you. And it's just, the way that life is showing up in that moment. So I like just this little thing. It's kind of weird to pick apart like this, but you say, I know they're thoughts and they aren't me, but it's hard to remember this when the panic is strong, as if, and I'm putting words in your mouth, Mary Lou, but I'm just doing this to kind of illustrate an important point here. As if the panic is its own thing. There's a thing called panic. There's a real thing out there called panic. And when it's strong in me, I don't remember the truth. Well, on the one hand, yes, you're right. That makes perfect sense, right? When anybody is in a panic about anything, we don't remember anything helpful. Like we just don't. Like you probably don't remember your phone number when you're in the middle of a panic. I mean, like that's all your resources are taken up by this experience. And the fact that we're calling it panic isn't just experience moving through us, it's experience moving through us that we're paying a lot of attention to and that we're scared to death of. So we're pushing and we're resisting and we're panicking and it's big and real and all of that. So that is what panic is. So of course, we don't remember things when we're in panic, but I want you to kind of see around this a little bit that not remembering is the same thing as panic. Like that's the same thing. When we forget who we are, when we get lost in our experience and afraid of it, we are in panic. And when we're in panic, we don't remember who we are and we're lost in our experience and afraid of it. So it's the exact same thing we're talking about. Basically what you're seeing here, Mary Lou, is that when my mind is racing, my mind is racing. Do you see that? Because that's all we're saying. That's all that's happening. You're as healthy as you ever been. The feeling's going to come and go. You're okay. But when you're saying, when my mind is racing, my mind is racing. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. If we can see that and put a period at the end right there, that's amazing. So everyone listening to this, whatever looks like the problem, yeah, but when I'm up in the middle of the night and I'm only going to get 3 hours of sleep, I don't remember, who I am and that it's just thinking. And when I'm caught up in all this frustration and counting the hours and all of that, I don't remember exactly what you're saying right there. And I just made that up, but people say it, right? What we're saying right there is when my mind is busy, my mind is busy. If you say, oh, I'm fine with anxiety and habits and I wish I had those issues, but for me it's depression. And when I fall into this, I'm in it for months and it's really hard and I can't see my way out of it and I don't want to get out of bed and I don't want to do anything that I enjoy and life is just hard. And depression does that to me. When the depression sets in, that's how it goes. If you're saying that, what you're actually saying is, when my mind is busy, my mind is busy. I can't see anything because my mind is really busy. So I want you to kind of start to get a feel for this, the panic, this, we're just calling it a word. Like panic is a different thing to everyone, right? It's totally different to everyone. It's not a thing. We feel energy moving through us and then our mind calls it a thing. Our mind thingifies it. Oh, you're having an anxiety attack because that's what you have. Somebody else, Mary Lou, exact same feelings you have, their mind might never call it a panic attack, might never call it anything. For them, it's just no big deal. It was interesting because what you're writing here about having these nosebleeds and going to the doctor and being kind of concerned about that, that's totally happening in my family. My daughter and my husband are both having tons of nosebleeds. It's just dry air. No big deal. They couldn't care less. And I'm not saying like, you should be like them or they're stronger or anything. It's just for them that they have no thinking about it. They're like, oh, dry air, no big deal. For us sometimes, oh, feeling kind of nervous. Ooh, a little weird feeling, no big deal. But when we have this thinking that calls it panic, and we're in a panic attack, and this keeps coming back, and I can't see through it, it starts to become this thing in our minds, and it's not really a thing. All that's happening is your mind is busy. When your mind is busy, everything looks solid and becomes a thing, but it isn't really. That's just a busy mind. When your mind is busy, your mind is busy. So you ask, how can I be in the state of well-being we all naturally have when fearful thoughts come so often? And I love that question. And I know what you mean by that question. I'm going to give an annoying answer probably, but I know what you mean by that question. I think what you mean to say is, how can I feel a sense of well-being when fearful thoughts come so often? And I'll speak to that. But the way you wrote it, I just want to point out, how can I be in the state of well-being we all naturally have when fearful thoughts come so often? Two different things. Our well-being is not affected by what's showing up, just like the sky is not affected by the weather that shows up, right? So like we can easily forget that too. When our mind gets busy, our mind gets busy. We forget that stuff, right? So maybe that's helpful too, to remember your well-being hasn't gone anywhere. It can't go anywhere. You're in that state of well-being. You're just paying more attention to the fearful thoughts. That's all. In those moments, there's just a couple places to look. We either fall into the well-being, we sense it back there, we know it's there, we feel it deep within us, and we feel all that stuff, but we kind of have a touch on the well-being. Or sometimes your mind is busy, you're completely caught up in the fearful thoughts, and you're thinking there's no well-being here, but there is. You're just looking right here, and all that's right here is a bunch of fearful thoughts that look really real. So the well-being is never anywhere. And I think that's more than just a sky metaphor in a nice illustration. This is really huge for us to see, because our suffering comes up when we start splitting things. Oh, I need well-being versus I have all these thoughts versus this needs to happen versus I have panic attacks. Those are all ways that our mind comes in and slaps a label on experience that's moving through us, that's labelless. It's just life moving through us. It's so much more fluid. It's fluid. Picture it fluid, right? Picture it like flowing down a river. Now we can look and say, oh, there's that wave and that thing, that molecule of water, and this little bit over here is more muddy, and that over there is clean. Like we can pick it apart all day long. And that's kind of what our mind does with our experience. Our mind says, you're feeling this way, you're feeling that way, that's going on, this is going on, yesterday, tomorrow, like it's doing that all over the place. But that is our mind doing that. And we want to start to see beyond that. Just because your mind does that, I mean, every human being's mind does that, right? So that's kind of a wash. That's a given. It's a given. Our mind is going to tell stories and label things and compare this and that all day long. No big deal. But if we start to see, oh, that's just what a mind does, but I'm going to see this bigger feeling behind it. I'm full of well-being. Even the thinking coming up is well-being. It's just well-being in a different costume. It just has a different energy to it. And your mind jumps in and says, no, this is scary thoughts. That's not well-being. So there's all this separation happening that just isn't real. It's just what a mind does. So that's the answer to the question you asked, the way you wrote it. How can I, well, it's not saying it's the answer, but it's speaking to that, right? How can I be in the state of well-being we all naturally have when fearful thoughts come so often? You can't help but to be. It's just done. It's done all the time. You're always in well-being, and you're thinking that your mind is saying, scary, don't like this, scary, don't like this. But I think there's something, I mean, I can't tell you what that's done for me personally, to see that regardless of how it looks, regardless of how it feels, I can't be separate from the whole. I can't be separate from that wellness, from that health. Not even possible. The worst that can happen is I can be really staring at the illusion that I'm separate from it. Really staring at the illusion of all this stuff coming up that looks so real. That's the worst that can happen, is we're caught in an illusion. Nothing worse than that. And that really sucks sometimes. It's very scary sometimes, and it doesn't feel like an illusion. I'm not taking away your pain, not taking away your suffering. I'm just saying it's a very different story to think, where's my well-being? I have all this fearful thinking instead. No, it's all there. It's all the same thing. We just get so caught up in this illusion of this thing is all that's there. The scary feeling, these thoughts are all that's there, and it's never that way. It's fluid. One energy, different forms. One energy, different forms all the time. Not only one energy, different forms, but one energy, different forms, taking shape, dissolving, and coming back as a new form constantly, our entire lives. Always recycling. Always changing form and shape, and our mind will always give different labels to, like, just to be in the flow of that naturally, this creative energy that just brings different stuff and takes away and brings new and takes away and brings new all the time. When we feel stuck, when you had panic attacks back in December, and here in February your mind is still afraid of them, it's because we're not in the fluid. We're not in the fluidity of it. We're in the, this happened. I don't want that feeling. Don't want that feeling. What's going on now? Is this coming back? But it's not now. It's not now. Now is just life moving through us. So the other question that you didn't exactly write, but I think this is what you meant, Mary Lou. How can I feel well-being? Right? You're always in the state of well-being, but how can I feel well-being in the midst of all of these painful thoughts? Well, it's really, truly going back to the most basic, simple thing that you've ever seen, and staying there and seeing how it works. How it works, period. Because when you say, I know these thoughts aren't real, I know they aren't me, but they're powerful and I'm afraid of them. You don't know. Like, you know, intellectually, we all know, we can hear it and learn it as a fact. We can recite it on a test. It doesn't do anything for us. We don't know. Me neither. When I'm caught up in something, I don't know that my thoughts are just thoughts. No, I don't. I can say it. I can pull out a book that I wrote about it and read my own writing in a book, but I don't know it. If I'm suffering, I don't know it. And when you're suffering and you're afraid of your thoughts, you don't know it. You don't know it in that moment. And that doesn't mean anything. It just means we just get blind to it. We're just, again, really caught up in that. And we just don't see the bigger picture. But what we can do then, how we can feel well-being, even in the middle of a bunch of fearful thoughts, is to keep backing up and seeing how it works. So I get caught up too, right? Like, I don't know it when I'm caught up, but you start to know more and more. Oh, I know how this works. It only works one way for every human. When you feel really, really bad and really panicky and really caught up, that feeling's going to go away pretty soon, and it doesn't mean anything. It sounds so simple, and I'm saying it in a very simple way, but you just know that. Like, that's what we want to keep exploring. So you know it intellectually already, Mary Lou, which is wonderful. I think it doesn't do much for your experience, but I think the intellectual knowing is like a great stepping stone. It's a great first step. You get, in a mechanical, intellectual way, how it works, and you get it deeper than that often. But you want to keep looking and saying, wow, I'm not the exception. Even in all my panic, I'm still, like, if I'm looking in this direction and I'm saying these are universal principles about how our experience works, why am I over here, like, putting myself as an exception and saying, yeah, but, and all this, and again, I'm not picking on you. We all do this to some extent. But if we want to see more about this, we need to at some point set the exceptions aside and just look to the simple truth of who we are and how our experience works. Not in Amy's life and Mary Lou's life and Charlotte's life and Laura's life. No, none of that. Just how it works, period. Stop. Done. And stay there. And that's really hard for our mind sometimes, because our mind says, yeah, but, what about me? What about that feeling I had? What about December? What about those nosebleeds? That's where we get off track every single time. What about the meds? When will I get off the meds? I don't know. But stay here and see how it works, and that it only ever works in one way. There's only one way this works. And when we can stay there and see more about it in that way, I mean, that's it. That's it. That's where the depth comes in. That's where the simplicity comes in. That's where it's not an intellectual understanding anymore, because we deeply have woken up to something about this. That's where you will still get scared. You will still have fearful thoughts your entire life. Your entire life, Mary Lou, you will have them. But you will start to see more and more, okay, everybody has fearful thoughts. You'll get caught up in yours too at times, but you'll know when you feel horrible. You'll start to see it's quicker and quicker. Okay, I know what horrible means. I feel horrible for periods of time all the time. I just know, okay, my mind's going. That's how it sounds like. My mind's got something. My mind's going. There's really there's a whole thing in here. Doesn't look like a stable problem. And when you start to kind of be with it in that way, I mean, it just changes everything. But again, it's right here. It's like looking at the most simple truth of how it works, period, for every human being. And when your mind goes off to me and you and this and that, it's not there. So I hope that something in how I've talked about this here is helpful to you, Mary Lou, and to everyone listening, because this, again, has nothing to do with panic or anxiety or medication or any of that. It's everything. Everything applies here, because it only works one way, period, for all of us in all situations. So thank you guys so much for listening. Send me your questions, again, at askamy@thelittleschoolofbigchange.com. I'm not going to be here on Monday doing a live because I'm going on vacation next week, but I'll be back next week, the week after that. And just wanted to let you know that the Little School of Big Change highlight series is out. So if you're curious at all about what it looks like inside the school or how it works, go to the littleschoolofbigchange.com/highlights. There's a link here. And check out the highlight series. And it's a really cool short series of videos that just give you a taste of what it's like in there. So thanks guys for listening. Have a great Monday. I'll see you in 2 weeks.